Strap yourselves in and hold on tight. This is the Power Movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and this week it's all about bringing another legendary athlete on the show. And it's not another guy, it's a woman, one who is looked at as arguably the best big mountain skier of her time. But Kristen Ulmer wasn't trying to be the best female skier out there. She was trying to be the best skier, period. And when Kristen eventually replaced her jeans with a real skiing kit, things took off for her. And she was part of the generation of skiers that ushered in big mountain skiing to the masses. Kristen has a unique story and perspective on things, and I'll leave it at that. Before we get into it, I need to thank Catherine Smith over at Skull Candy for always keeping my headphone game fresh. I've now replaced my crappy AirPods with some sick new indie earbuds that fit and sound better, and I'm recording my podcasts, like I've done with every single podcast that I've ever recorded, on my Crusher ANCs, so thanks, Catherine. I also want to thank Alpine Vans for coming on as a sponsor. If you want a Sprinter van, there's a shortage going on, and if you want to get them, they're going to be hard to find, but Alpine has 8 in stock and they're ready to customize for you. They can have them in your driveway in 90 days. I also want to thank my other amazing sponsors who make this thing happen. First is 10 Barrel, and they now have a Pilsner, a brand new Pilsner out there, and I should have some sent to my house this week. I am so excited as I love a good Pilsner, and I have a feeling it's going to replace Profuse Juice as my go-to drink from the 10 Barrel Brewery. I'm going to be drinking those Pilsners out of my Stanley pint glasses, and I also want to thank Rollerblade for the sick new skates they sent over. They're going to help keep me in shape. And finally, I want to thank Peter Glenn Ski and Sports for the longtime support. But enough about my sponsors. Now it's time to speak with a living legend. It's time to talk with Kristen Ulmer. How's it going?
Good. Holy crap, my life is... My 87-year-old mom just threw up 20 times in a half an hour.
Oh,
So, she's all calmed down now, but I had to reschedule a clan I had right before you. So we only have an hour now. Is that okay?
Yeah, we'll try to get through it, and I guess I'll just jump into things. And I like to start off with an icebreaker of sorts, and there's so many different ways that I could go with you. But I'm going to start with art cars. And we see a decent amount of them here in Seattle. And you had an art car at one point. Tell me about your first art car.
Oh, I've more than had one art car.
No, but just your first one.
You just want to hear about my first one?
I'm going to ask you some more about the other ones after.
I think that's a fine idea. And I guess we're already recording. Hi.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. I was going through a difficult breakup and I loved Burning Man. And it seemed like the perfect opportunity for me to express myself through art, which I'd never done before. And so I bought a golf cart and I talked a welder into welding me the skeleton of a rat. And the breakup was with a ex-fiance who cheated on me. And so I think the assumption would be that, I built a rat because, he was a rat-fink bastard. But actually, no, he did me a favor. I built the rat to commemorate a phrase that came from Mark Twight, a professional ice climber, called feeding the rat. And it's where you celebrate your insecurities and demons. And in my case, my grief and despair and my fear and frustration with the world and life and people. And I just wanted to ride this rat like a horse. I put a saddle on the roof and a bit in its mouth and covered it in fur and had a sound system and built this 22-foot long, 7-foot high rat, and then dressed like a goddess all week at Burning Man and got cute men to drive me around. And I had the best Burning Man or best week of my life making this art project. And I'd never done an art project before. So that was pretty fun and enlightening and amazing and life-changing.
So I was going to ask you what made you want to build one, but it sounds like the breakup and having the art project, my guess is going to be mushrooms and Burning Man, but it sounds like a whole bunch of things go into making you want to build it. And your husband these days, and I don't know if it's a part of some strange mating ritual, but he made you a bigger, more badass art car.
Well, he made me several of them. So there's a couple things that going on, though. First of all, I actually don't do drugs at Burning Man. And people, I'm sure, find that very surprising. Or I don't do drugs very often, I should probably say. But compared to my friends, I mean, I've been to Burning Man 17 times. I go for 2 weeks at a time. I've been there for 34 weeks of my life. I've done drugs 5 times maybe like a quarter hit of LSD or something like that. Like that constitutes for not doing drugs at Burning Man. And I only do it just to get the stick out of my ass, from my regular life, like when I first arrived there, just to really kind of unstick myself from whatever stuck place I currently am in at the beginning. And then that's it, because you don't need to do drugs at Burning Man. It's just such an amazing experience. And I don't do drugs to party. I only do them for therapy, insights, getting unstuck, things like that. I see them as certainly some of them wholly spiritual kind of awakening opportunities. Ayahuasca, stuff like that. I do a lot, but not at Burning Man, obviously.
Right.
Those of you that do ayahuasca know you would never do that at Burning Man. But anyway, so there's that. And as for the art cars, and you probably don't know this, but I'm getting a divorce. So all you listeners out there that are age appropriate for me, give me a call. I'll probably go out to dinner with you. My husband, what happened is we went to Burning Man with the rat. I brought the rat 4 years, 2 years without him. And then I met him, and then he came with me for 2 years. He's a badass engineer, and everybody kept saying, "Oh, is this your rat?" And he's like, "No, it's my girlfriend's rat." First year. Second year, "No, it's my wife's rat." And finally he's like, "This sucks. We're getting rid of the rat." And then we built this giant praying mantis art car that Tony Shea bought after 2 years at Burning Man, and it's now a tourist attraction in downtown Las Vegas.
Whoa.
And of course, Tony has died, but if you go to Vegas, you just go to Fremont Street, walk to the shipping container park, and there it is. And you can't miss it. You Google shipping container park or praying mantis Las Vegas. Like it's actually a really big deal in Vegas. It was on the cover of the Las Vegas Tourism Bureau guide, which is saying a lot. I mean, it's Vegas.
Yeah, there's so much going on there.
Like, of all the things to put on the cover, like they put the mantis on there. And there's a plaque there talking about me and Kirk. And then we also built this giant scorpion art car with 7-gun computer controlled flame effects on the tip of the tail. Every year we brought it there, we would win best flame effects on an art car. Some guy's art project is giving awards, and it's a significant piece of art. We don't own it anymore, so if you see it at Burning Man, you haven't necessarily found me. But yeah, we don't have children. We had art cars.
Okay. And I think it establishes that you aren't like a cookie cutter normal type of person, like in a strange engineering nature/Burning Man nerdy type of way. You're different than the norm of regular people, which is a good thing. But it doesn't all start out like that. It all starts out in Henniker, New Hampshire. And is it mom, dad, older brother, white picket fence? Or is it not too many worries about things? Or is it like hard life on a farm? How do you grow up?
I'm in Henniker right now as I'm doing this interview, visiting my family. My brother's still here. I grew up with a musician father. He was a concert pianist, college professor of music, and a nurse mother. And they did not get along very well. And so they were in crisis mode. They were just free range parents. I ran wild. Like my brother ran across town at age 4. He probably walked a mile and a half to go and get some candy from our friend and crossed 2 major roads. And then the woman, when he got there, called my mom saying, "Are you aware that your son's at my house?" And my mom's like, oh, okay. Well, I'll come get him in a couple hours, right? So I grew up just doing whatever I wanted to. I mean, I remember being a kind of a big partier in junior high school. We're talking like age 13, 14. I'd be out all night and I wouldn't get punished. Like I could do whatever I want. It was great.
Is it true, and it might be true back then and not anymore, it still could be true today, but are you blind as a bat? Like, do you have eye issues from the get-go?
Oh my gosh, I am so blind. For those of you that wear contact lenses, -8.5 with astigmatism, but I've since had surgery and now I can see. But yeah, I was blind as a bat, and I had a really unhappy childhood because of it. I couldn't see anybody. I didn't have any friends, and my parents didn't notice that I needed glasses until I was a lot older. I didn't know that I couldn't see. Finally, a teacher noticed. And I didn't have any friends because I couldn't see anybody. And so I became really shy and internally focused. And then 7th grade is when I first started wearing glasses.
So do you have that miracle event where it's like you're blind forever, and then 7th grade you get those glasses and you're almost crying like, oh my God, this is what the world looks like?
No, I was worried I was going to get teased. That's all I remember, because my glasses were so thick. I mean, they were Coke bottles. I, had like the distorted eyes and everything. Yeah.
Were you able to play any sports when you were younger, or was like the vision so bad that you couldn't really do anything?
Yes, I was able to play sports, but I was like the second to last to be picked in high school sports. And I think it's cruel to pick teams. And the last to be picked was Ian, who was like, 60 pounds at age 15 and pale as a ghost. And he died young. And I mean, I was not athletic at all. I mean, I skied in jeans until I was 20 years old, too, for that matter. So, I mean, for all you people out there that are terrible athletes in high school, like there's hope for you yet.
But I would say skiing in jeans actually was a thing back then. Like they made gaiters to go over your rear entry boots and your jeans so you didn't get snow all over your jeans and everything. So that was like a fashion thing back then because you are, you're no spring chicken by any means.
No, I'm not. And they did. And especially in the East, like it was no big deal. Everybody skied in jeans. And I don't think they do so much anymore. But the thing is, I skied in jeans until I was 20 years old. And that's, when you get to be as good as I was getting, and when you do as much skiing as I was doing, I think that it started becoming a little weird. And I certainly wasn't all that into skiing when I was younger. Probably around age 16 was when I really got into it. So I was really, really into skiing for 4 years and still skiing in jeans. And I moved west and started skiing powder at Snowbird for 2 seasons and still skied in jeans.
That's crazy.
At Snowbird.
That is pretty funny. And, I'm going to assume that you were like this total badass kid, but all that is kind of thrown to the wayside when I hear you talking about it. But I'm thinking stitches, cuts, and you just being a total badass. But then I read somewhere that you also took second at the Miss Teenage New Hampshire pageant. Is there truth to that as well?
Yes, there is. And I was as surprised as you sound. Like, yeah, I took second, and it was very competitive. I mean, they got, I don't know, hundreds of applications. They narrowed it down to 50, and then we did a 3-day event, and it was a big deal. And that's really where the turning point came for me, is not only getting glasses in second grade, but then growing breasts and all of a sudden realizing that I was really pretty and I was getting a lot of attention for that. I mean, that really, everything helped me come out of my shell, winning that thing. And, I was doing a lot of, we probably don't want to talk about this, but anybody that knew New Hampshire in the 80s knows that it was an epicenter for cocaine use. So I started doing a lot of, I quit drinking and I quit smoking pot when I was 14 years old.
Whoa.
Yeah, whoa. But I then replaced it with doing cocaine. And then when you're trying to figure out who you are, I'm sure it just fried my brain because I was still growing. I felt such confidence from doing all this coke all the time that I felt like that's all of a sudden what my personality was. So I literally a switch flipped and I went from being this insecure, shy introvert with serious self-esteem problems to being an extrovert beauty queen, I guess, for lack of a better word, with this false drug-induced confidence. And then by the time I quit doing the cocaine at age 18, the transformation was complete. And all of a sudden I was who you now have read about in the ski magazine. But yeah, it was kind of a very unusual upbringing for sure.
So what kind of kid are you in the high school days? Like what music are you listening to and what kind of things are you doing? I mean, we've heard what you're doing, but what kind of things pop culture wise are you into?
I was obsessed with Led Zeppelin and like Allman Brothers Band. I mean, I love to dance.
Do you get into the Dead like everybody else seemed to at that point?
No, I've never been into that whole hippie scene. Like I'll always wear a bra. I'm not drawn towards like those kinds of clothing. Like I've been to 4 Dead shows, but it's not my world. It's not my people. Like I would never go to the Rainbow Gathering. If I heard the Grateful Dead at Burning Man, I'd run in the opposite direction. Like not that you would ever hear the Grateful Dead at Burning Man, but no, I'm more disco. I was learning breakdancing. Like I definitely was not a hippie child.
Okay. And it sounds like your senior year of high school is when you start skipping school to go skiing and skiing starts taking over and you become a passionate skier. And then when it's time to pick a college, do you do your first semester abroad? Like how are you able to convince your parents to go abroad before you even started college in the US?
Oh my gosh, you have done some amazing homework.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I graduated a year early from high school. I got skipped ahead of grade 1 year because I was really advanced in math and language. And then I took college classes while I was in high school. And I pretty much just hung out with the college students. That's where I was doing all the coke and stuff. And I didn't hang out with any high school students, and I didn't date high school students. I dated college students. And I was definitely a part of the college scene, which also lent to my confidence. And so next thing you know, I'm 17 years old and a sophomore in college already in England. And then I traveled around afterwards, just being a ski bum after that first semester in Europe, and then came home eventually. I'm like, you know what? That's it. Skiing's my thing. I need to go to college now out west. I didn't know anything about anything to do with skiing. Until I was age 16, I didn't even know there was skiing outside of my hometown in New Hampshire.
Okay.
I mean, I was so ignorant because my parents never did anything to educate me. I was so ignorant at age 18. They gave me a credit card and I used it. And they're like, oh, well, you have to pay us back. And I didn't even understand that if you use a credit card, you have to actually pay the credit card company money. I mean, I was so naive. And that also showed up in how I went to college. I mean, I wanted to go out west and I just asked people, where's there skiing out west? And they said, you should go to Salt Lake City. I had never heard of Snowbird. I'd never heard of Alta. I'd heard of Park City, but I didn't know it was a ski resort. Like, I didn't know anything. So I just went there blindly, hoping for the best, and got a job at Snowbird. And yeah, that changed things fast.
So you do the Europe trip, you have this epiphany in Zermatt, you end up at the University of Utah, you're skiing at Snowbird. This is like 1985, so the world's a totally different place. There's like 4 channels, no mobile phones, no shape to skis. They're as straight as they possibly could be. And are you aware of the ski industry? Like, are you aware of the Plakes and Schmidts of the world yet? Or is it just jeans and gaiters and you figuring out what the new terrain's like?
Oh, I didn't know anything about anything. And it's funny you mentioned Plake and Schmidt. So this guy kept asking me out. And I kept saying, no. He was a lot older than me. I was 19. He was 27. And finally he said, hey, I have these 2 tickets to a Warren Miller movie. And that was the one where Scott Schmidt was introduced jumping off cliffs that made him famous.
Yep.
And I remember sitting in the audience going, oh my God. And then I wound up dating that guy, probably just because of the movie, for 4 years.
Whoa.
He was my first love. Right? But back then, Glenn Plake wasn't famous yet. Scott barely was. Like, I had no concept of the possibilities of being a professional skier. I just wanted to ski. I was just obsessed with skiing.
Now it's time for my first sponsor break, and I'm going to put Alpine Vans up front this week, as I know if you're like me, you've looked at a Sprinter before and you're wondering how you can fit it into your life. There are so many choices, but Alpine Vans is the one-stop shop to get it done right. Alpine was started by a ski patroller who wanted to avoid the commute required to close one day and open the next. You know, he wanted to keep his boots warm, have hot coffee, and get a good night's sleep. Well, after perfecting his own van, he realized that it doesn't matter if you're the bougie type, a dirtbag, whatever. You want a vehicle built for adventure, and that's what Alpine Vans delivers. They've thought of the dry flush toilet for easy winterization and trash can disposable waste. They know you need to be confident that your battery-powered AC works for those times that you want to leave your dog behind to hit the single track. They know all the ins and outs of what you need for a Sprinter van built for adventure. I'll be sharing more about Alpine Vans each week this summer, but for now, know that they always have an inventory of all-wheel drive vans. They can have your dream van to you in 90 days. And to find out more about Alpine, you can head on over to alpinevans.com and make sure you check out the Quote Builder. Just the questions they ask in that Quote Builder let you know the attention to detail and the thoughtfulness that they're going to put in your build. So please check out Alpine Vans. My next sponsor is Stanley. And it's already summer in my eyes, and if you aren't ready for your camping, hiking, and general outdoor adventure needs yet, it's time to get on it. And you and yours deserve the best stuff out there. And Stanley has been setting the industry standard of innovation and quality and getting you out there since 1913. By listening to the Powell Movement, you're going to get the best deal you'll find on all Stanley products anywhere. It's through this podcast. I'll get you 30% off everything Stanley. All you need to do is head on over to stanley1913.com, go shopping, and use the code DRINKFAST. That's all one word, all lowercase at checkout, and you'll get that deal. Spend over $100 and I'll throw in a limited edition Powell Movement beanie. So please support the folks at Stanley and make sure you're dialed in for the summer. My final sponsor is the 10 Barrel Brewery out of Bend, Oregon. I love their beers and I love their mixed drinks, and recently I've started drinking this new thing called Clean Line Hard Seltzer. And I've always been a bubble water fan, and that's what Clean Line is, with an alcoholic kick. I'm going to guess that this type of alcoholic water drink is going to be a huge hit, And 10 Barrel has knocked it out of the park with Clean Line. They've also knocked it out of the park with the way they support action sports. If you ski, snowboard, or bike, you know 10 Barrel supports some amazing athletes, creates amazing events, and donates to causes like Protect Our Winners and the Surfrider Foundations. They put their money where their mouth is. So next time you're at the store, try a 6-pack of 10 Barrel or the Clean Line Seltzer and support the beer that supports you. You can find out more about 10 Barrel over at 10barrel.com. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. Back then, I think you had met Scott Markowitz, and he was like a ski model at that point, and that was what you knew of what a skier could be, is like, hey, take pictures and smile for a turn?
Yeah, this is long before Scott ever started taking photos. So I kind of hung out with him and a bunch of other people, and they were always doing photo shoots. So I started doing photo shoots. And then I also started competing in moguls because they were all competing in moguls. I don't think Scott Markowitz was, but everybody else that we were hanging out with was. And so I just wanted to hang out with this group of the best skiers on the mountain, basically at Snowbird. And they were taking road trips to compete in moguls and competing in aerials and doing photo shoots. I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. Because that was what they were doing. So that's what I started doing blindly.
And is that how you got into the film game too? Because I think there was a ski movie, X to Ski. You got a couple shots in there, and that probably puts you on the radar of an entire industry because there's not that many women in the game who are taking skiing to another level at that point. What's the next big opportunity after that movie?
Well, that movie, let me just tell you a quick story because I didn't know how to ski very well, but I was really into catching air very quickly. And I could catch air great in the moguls, but I really couldn't ski the moguls that well.
Okay.
And so we're filming this movie, Ecstasy, and that definitely did not put me on the map because nobody really watched that movie. But there's one little incident where there is this big wind lip that was just huge. It's in Little Cloud Bowl. And these guys were jumping off of it. And now it was my turn, and we're up on the cat track really far away. And it's huge air. And somebody, probably Scott Markowitz, said, oh, you should straight run it from here. And I'm like, oh, okay, good idea. So go off this thing. It was probably my first air more than like 5 feet of my life. And to this day, it's the biggest air I've ever caught. I mean, I probably went 150 feet, maybe
Holy
40,
crap.
50 feet in the air.
Jesus.
And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to pop. I didn't know how to land. I knew nothing. I had caught like 5 feet of air. And all of a sudden I'm doing this. I think back on that now. It just seems crazy. And I'm heading right towards a tree in the air because I overshot the landing by miles, right?
Right.
And I'm like, one leg's up, one leg's down. I remember passing out in midair out of shock and landed at the base of the tree and somehow was uninjured because I was young and made of rubber. And and of course that's in the movie, but nobody's ever seen it because nobody ever saw the movie. But wow, I was like dropping out of the sky like a rock. It's insane. And so, but it's, you know, a sign of things to come because I put it in quotes, had no fear and did stupid stuff like that. But anyway.
Well, you say you have no fear, and later on in your life, there's going to be a whole bunch coming about fear. Not in this podcast. We're not going to have time to talk about all that. But eventually, maybe we'll do a second one and we can talk about the fear part. But back then, when you're young, the fear with younger people isn't as much as when you get to be 28 to 35. I think things hit you a little bit differently. Whereas when someone tells you to point it and hit that jump, all you're thinking is point it and hit that jump. There are no consequences. But when you get older, you start thinking about those. But that's not where I'm going. This is the late 80s, early 90s. And I'm sure at this point you're aware of the ski scene a little bit more. And you're definitely not going to be strictly a ski model. But if you wanted to have a ski career and you didn't race, were moguls the only other option? Is that why you went to that style of skiing?
No, I didn't have any ambition whatsoever at any time to have a ski career until I had one.
Okay.
And I had no ambition whatsoever to get on the U.S. ski team for moguls until I was on the U.S. ski team for moguls. It was bizarre.
So you're just skiing in local contests and people are seeing you and eventually you get put on the radar because you're doing well at these events?
Yeah, I mean, I skied in jeans until I was 20. And then 3 years later, I'm on the U.S. ski team for moguls, and I'm considered the best woman big mountain extreme skier in the world in just 3 years. And I never had any training during those 3 years. I never had any desire or ambition to do any of these things. I just wanted to ski. And I also was an attention hog. Like I wanted to get attention. You know, that's the extreme skiing. That's what we called it back then. And the mogul skiing, wasn't so much about attention. I mean, mogul skiing is so addicting. And yeah, it was this transformation. Because in those 3 years, it's like I was competing against girls that have been raised in high school ski academies and have the best training money can buy, who have been groomed their whole lives to get on the U.S. ski team. I show up fresh off of skiing in jeans, and next thing you know, I'm on the team without any ambition to even be on the team. It was a shock to me, and it's like nobody knew where I came from. I was just all of a sudden there. It was instantaneous.
How do you do with the other girls on the U.S. team or just the other girls in the extreme circuit? Because it seems like all this stuff just happened to you. I mean, based on your talent and what Mark Gallup, I think, once called you have huge ovaries. But what do all the other girls think? Where it all came easy for you, they have to work their asses off, and you're like quoted saying like, yeah, the only other girl that's even close can't even land a 10-foot cliff, and I'm landing 70-foot cliffs. Do they all hate you?
Well, first of all, I would never say that.
I found it in print.
Yeah, I'm sure it was taken out of context.
Okay.
But it wasn't a dig against other girls. It was more just when people would say, oh, you're the best in the world, that I'd say like, well, yeah, I mean, I'm doing these huge jumps and my competition are doing 10-footers and crashing. But I wasn't like meant to be like an attack against women. And actually, I've adored the women in the ski industry, with a few exceptions. Like every once in a while, there'd be one that was really mean and would say mean things behind my back that would always get back to me. Or there were girls that were so competitive that they wouldn't try to make friends. But the ones that did try to make friends, or I would try to make friends with the mean ones, like I was really friendly. I wasn't competitive against the girls. I was competitive against the guys, but not in like a vicious way. It was more like oh yeah, that was cool. Watch this, right? Kind of way, right? It was like a one-upsmanship, like camaraderie thing. Like I don't think that women saw me as being disrespectful or condescending to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And in everything that I read, it definitely seemed like everything was against the guys more so than against the girls. You're kind of saying it matter-of-factly, like, this is how it is with the girls, but I'm insulted when you call me like a woman skier or the best big mountain woman skier. I'm the best big mountain skier or one of them out there. You don't have to put my gender in front of me. It's kind of what it seemed like to me throughout your career was like the big battle was like, watch me ski. I ski just like that dude. And you don't need to say that I don't.
Right. And I would never say that. I would just let other people say it on my behalf.
Sure.
You know, or I just exuded that. I was internally very cocky and arrogant, but I wasn't verbally cocky and arrogant, if that makes sense, except for saying things like, I'm going to win this. But I want to make sure that it's known that I was very respectful of other people because I had respect for them. And what else did I want to say about that? I just wanted to be the best, period. And it really worked for me with the sponsors because that was very intriguing to them. Like if I was going around saying, well, you're not sponsoring any women, and, you know, like I wasn't pulling the woman card. I was just, I'm a professional skier. I'm not a professional woman skier. I'm a professional skier. And so I didn't use my gender to try to get ahead, but it just happened. You know, I probably had more opportunities because I was a woman. But if I had made a big point of letting people acknowledge that, or like me acknowledging that, I think I would have had fewer opportunities, and the industry wouldn't have been in as much, I guess, awe of my personality or approach to the sport, I guess, as they were back then. I mean, it was really, I could write my own ticket. I mean, I had endless opportunities because of that approach.
When you're in that pole position, especially when the manufacturers are definitely seeing gender, where they might not be talking about it, but they're like, we have the best woman to ever ski and she's on our program, in their opinion. Yeah, it's going to create a shit ton of opportunities. But before those opportunities can happen, you are on the U.S. team. And when you're on the U.S. team back then, can you not have sponsors and not take money because you're on this amateur circuit, which is the Olympic track?
Yeah, and I'm sure that's changed by now. But back then you had to be, quote, an amateur athlete, which means you couldn't make money from skiing to be on the U.S. ski team. So what do you do if you don't have rich parents? Because it's not like the second you make the team, they just start paying for everything. You know, you have to prove yourself. If you're low man on the totem pole, you know, back then it would cost about $30,000, you know, probably the equivalent of like $90,000 in today's world, just to be able to tour around the country and go to all the trainings and be on the U.S. ski team, pay for all your airline tickets, all that. just to be on the team. And if you can't make money from skiing, but yet skiing's your full-time job, like where do you come up with that money? It's impossible. You have to have rich parents. And then, of course, if you start winning, eventually they pay for everything. But just to get to that point, you have to have money. And I didn't have any. And not only that, I felt like a fish out of water. The second I was on the US ski team, I'm like, holy shit. I was so intimidated. I had such a huge imposter syndrome going on. I just pulled an incredible season off after going to, I'm sure you read about me going to Asia and all that and working on my self-confidence and how that translated to skiing. Like I just all of a sudden was in over my head and really intimidated by all the cameras and all the screaming fans. And like, it was not a place for me to shine. I did not like being in the gate. I was scared and I didn't know what to do about my fear. And so for me, the decision was, okay, do I keep doing this and feel awful and feel like an imposter? Or do I go heli skiing in Canada and jump off cliffs into deep powder and get paid to do it versus hemorrhaging, my waitressing money, to be on the US ski team? It was an easy decision.
Did you get hurt too? I mean, I read you were on trampolines because they do create opportunities with water ramps and trampolines, but when you're off snow in a different environment, which is that trampoline environment, it sounds like you torque your knee somehow and blow it out. Is that how you do your knee?
Yeah, I'm really lucky in that I didn't have many injuries in my ski career. And I think it's because I didn't live in Squaw Valley.
The heavy
and the
snow?
reason why, well, it's not the heavy snow. It's just that everyone that lives in Squaw Valley, it's like a place it's Squallywood, right? It's a place to be seen and see others. And it's like, I didn't do crazy shit unless I was being filmed. Whereas if you're in Squaw Valley, if you're just out skiing for fun, you do crazy shit because your friends are doing it and everybody's watching and you're like you in capital letters and you're famous and, everybody wants to be impressed. Like, let's see it, Ulmer. Like, I think it's because I saw it as a job and I would carefully choose the times where I would like go off and do big things. And it really was a profession for me after a while. Rather than just jumping off of everything all day, every day, I would only wait until it was the right conditions, the cameras were out, and that this was a big enough opportunity that it's time to like give her, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of training involved too. And I blew my ACL on training aerials on a trampoline. Didn't realize it was blown because it's not that big of a deal to blow an ACL if you don't know what it is or what to look for. I'm just like, oh, you've heard the term. I tweaked my knee or twisted my knee, and you're just in denial. And then I kept skiing, and then I blew it out and blew a bunch of other stuff too. And then I had surgery, and the doctor put in a cadaver ligament, and the cadaver ligament didn't take. My body rejected it. And it rejected it while I was riding my bike across India to try to get strong again.
I got a question about that. So you have this injury, you have your surgery, and then when you tell your doctor that you're going to go on this crazy solo travel mission, you're going to ride your bike through Bangladesh, what does the doctor say? Is he like, actually, why don't you stay here and be on a stationary bike and be smart about your future and in the way that you do things? You believe in your body and believe in the way you want to do things, and you're just like, nope, I'm doing this mission?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I was a free-range child, and so I turned into a free-range adult.
So that's like Kristen style is like, hey, I hear you, doctor, and I will see you when I get back from my trip, and you're going to realize that everything's fine. Even though you get back and you realize that everything's not fine, it doesn't take. And that has to be one of the most frustrating things, that you actually go through the motions of the surgery, you do a lot of the rehab, and you do this biking that's going to get you strong, and you come back and you're like, I'm back at square one again.
Yeah, I was pretty upset about that because that was actually an Olympic year. And I was still on the US ski team when I got back from that. And I had skied the whole season before. I didn't do the full knee blowout until late in the season. And so it's now October and it's an Olympic year. I still have my spot on the US ski team if I want. And I now don't have an ACL going into the ski season. And so I called the US ski team and I'm like, I mean, there's no way you can ski moguls at that level without an ACL. So I quit and skied that whole season with no ACL and skied at a very high level, like
it's a huge year for you.
Movies and stuff. Like it was so hard to do. Like I had to block a lot of fear and pain out and just turn on the Dragon. And then I had it redone. And then I come to find out that it failed again the next winter because he kept putting another cadaver in me. And he kept saying, oh, it's because you did this bike tour, because you crashed on your bike while you were there. I did crash on that trip. And he was lying to me, it turns out. What had happened is my body had rejected the ACL reconstruction. So then I had it done a second time. So that's 3 ACL reconstructions on my right knee. And then the next season, I blew my left knee out. So I had 4 ACL reconstructions in 3 years, and I never missed a ski season.
And that's just because you're dealing with pain management and you don't give a fuck. You're just like, I'm going to make it through this season. I'm this age and I need to just push through it.
It's not that I didn't give a fuck. It's like I gave a damn about my ski career more than I gave a damn about whatever was going on with my knee. And I was so hungry. I was so hungry. And I was having all these opportunities. The last thing I was going to do was say no to these opportunities. I mean, I went up to Alaska and it was actually really embarrassing. I went to the first ever U.S. extreme skiing competition in Crested Butte, and I needed to win. And I won the thing with a torn ACL, a torn MCL, and torn medial and lateral cartilage.
That is insane.
I know. And I jumped off what Powder Magazine called a 70-foot cliff onto kind of hard pack on skinny skis, right? With my knee like that, and stuck the landing and took, I can't remember if I was 4th place or 7th place for the men out of like 150 guys. And then went to the Worlds up in Alaska with my knee now even worse. I couldn't even walk. And I'm now in Alaska for the first time in my life, skiing these enormous life or death lines with my knee. I couldn't even walk, and I still took second. But it was embarrassing because the only reason why I took second is because I didn't crash. Everybody else crashed. The girls were all trying to beat me, right?
Is that your Emily one?
No, that was your Emily one. And I was mortified that I didn't win.
And you couldn't blame the knee. It's not in your mentality. It's just like, I lost.
Well, after I lost, I wanted everybody to know that, you know what, I can't walk. It was like, I was really embarrassed. And to this day, there's girls out there that are like, she wasn't so great. And they don't realize what I was dealing with. And that was when I finally went and had my knee fixed for real with not using a cadaver. And then the next year I blew my other knee out. And not only that, I was up there not only with my knee in that condition, but having had 2 ACL reconstructions in a year and a half that both failed. Like, it was like such a head trip too. I mean, talk about will and grit and determination. I couldn't walk, and yet I'm competing and skiing 3,000 vertical feet nonstop with my knee like that through terrain that could potentially end your life while being judged. I mean, it was, oh my gosh. And the amount of strength you have to do that. I mean, by the time I was at the bottom of these 3,000 foot runs, and this is not when you just flash these things. We're all doing hop turns the whole goddamn way down, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was just like sucking wind so hard. It was very difficult. It's one of the most difficult things I've ever done, is take second place in that competition under those circumstances.
It's time for another sponsor break. And now that ski and snowboard season is over, Peter Glenn doesn't stop. They're the one-stop shop for all of your summer needs. You want a pair of inline skates, a wakeboard? Peter Glenn has it and has had it for over 70 years. They are a mom-and-pop group of shops that do a great job competing with the cutthroat online guys, but still offer a low-price guarantee, free shipping on orders of over $50, and a no-hassle return policy. They support a lot of great things in action sports, this podcast, Johnny Mosley, and so much more. So when you go shopping, please check out peterglenn.com to get some of the best prices and the greatest variety of products on the internet. My final sponsor is Rollerblade, and if you haven't been on inline skates in a minute, well, you're missing out on the best kept secret in getting fit. Inline skating is the convenient and fun way to get a workout in, and it won't destroy your knees like running, it won't hurt your bank account like biking, and skating, it's easy. You can throw them in your suitcase on a trip or in your trunk, and you're good to go. No racks, no long waits for service or baggage charges. They're also the best way to get your legs in shape for ski season. And Rollerblade's Ski to Skate app is geared to do just that. Get you ready to shred. You can find out more about Rollerblade over at rollerblade.com or get the free Skate to Ski app over at the App Store. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. Hearing about your life choices, it reminds me of everything you would think like a 20-year-old stupid dude would do. You know, not thinking through the consequences, pushing through, going for the adrenaline, going for the rush, and trying to prove something to people where, I don't know, it seems like that's the mentality, which is just crazy. And you're in a dude's kind of boys club where it's like I won't say token female because there's some other women there, but like, who is your inner circle of skiers? Are there any girls part of that, or is it all just a list of royalty skiers?
Well, I'll answer that in a second, but let me just say that professional extreme athletes still today hide their injuries. Like, you think of Shane McConkey, and you don't ever think about in terms of injuries that he had. Yet that guy has had, before he died, I think at age 39, he had probably 15 severe, we're talking like broken back, broken neck, dislocated pelvis, blown out knee, broken leg, stuff like that, injuries. Like Rick Armstrong, by the time he was 31, had 19 surgeries or something like that. And you don't hear about these things because the athletes hide their injuries and they hide them from their sponsors. And so that's just something that happens. And did I have friends and peers, to answer your question now too? I did pretty much. I think that everyone in the ski industry, everyone in that scene, everyone that competed, I was friends with everyone. I just loved everyone so much. They were such amazing characters, and everybody was so fun and funny, and all the guys were sexy and all the girls were sassy, and every single one of them, with only 2 exceptions. Well, 3, and all girls, right? 3 girls that were just kind of, one was elusive, one was a backstabber, and one was just outright mean. So, yeah, of the hundreds, if not thousands of people that I knew from the ski industry, there were only 3 that I just really felt slighted by, and they were all girls.
Does it become a life where it's like you're around all the time? Is just guys talking shit and locker room talk per se, and you're just one of the guys like that, or is it different?
No, not at all. If you're talking about girls, kind of funny, but it was just fun and funny. No, people did not talk shit about each other.
Well, maybe not even talking shit about each other, but like
talking about girls.
Or not even girls. If you're looking at Kent and you guys are standing on top of a cliff and you're like, don't be a pussy, Kent. Are you kind of taking that kind of behavior to him? Because he might say it to...
Definitely not. You would never, ever, 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 ever say that to an athlete who's about to risk their life.
No, and I'm maybe not risking their life, but I'm just saying, like, when you're trying to push someone and it might not be life and death, is it playful like that?
Not really.
Okay.
No, definitely not, because these are life or death decisions. So we're not egging each other on. We're very respectful of each other's process. And, to illustrate that, I'll tell you a story. Aaron McGovern was about to ski a line in a competition and told Kent Kreitler about it. And Kent was thinking, oh my gosh, you're going to die. Like, he was thinking this, like, why would you ski that? But like, Aaron's like in the zone and he's just so focused and so confident. And Kent's like, doesn't say a word. He's like, all right, just back off. Because you don't ever want to be the person that eggs somebody on and then they die, right? We're so respectful of each other's process. And everybody's different. I know Wendy Fisher really needed to be egged on. I know that she really needed to borrow confidence from the men that she was skiing with in order to ski the lines that she did. But I can't think of anybody else that needed that. We weren't a whole bunch of wingnuts just like calling each other pussies. We were like calculated, world-class athletes that were respectful of each other and in awe of each other's process is more how it felt. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And I think you're thinking more on like the high level, I'm going to risk everything. I'm thinking more on the everyday, we're going to go shred together and just messing with each other. But I can see that you're never going to want to put the bug in someone's head that what they're doing is crazy, especially when it's a risk everything kind of situation.
Well, let me answer it differently then.
Okay.
After I retired, I remember Shane McConkey, we went skiing. He's like, all right, Ulmer, let's see if you still got it. That's, I think, the only time anybody's ever said anything like that to me to egg me on.
And I can totally see that coming from Shane, because when I think of people egging people on, that's exactly who I'm thinking about. Is like, hey, no, you can backflip that. Come on, dude. You know you can do it.
He's the only one.
Yeah.
There's nobody else.
Okay. So that's who I'm kind of thinking about there. How do you end up with the nickname Princess?
I was on a trip with Scott Markowitz and a whole bunch of other professional skiers through Europe and the editor of Powder Magazine. And there were like 9 of us on a trip for 2 weeks. And so I'm out running errands and I'm hanging out with all these badasses. And I get to the top of this long, icy stairwell and this European man rushes up to me and takes me by the arms and like helps me down the slippery staircase. And he has no idea what I do for a living or who I am, right?
Right.
So I'm like, oh, thank you. And anyway, I go back to the hotel and I tell these guys that that's the way I was just treated by this nice European man. And I expect that treatment from now on from everybody. And so it became like this big joke. And so we went out for dinner that night and I get to this curb. It's just like a little step down and they all jump on the curb and just, it's only like 6 inches. And I'm like, excuse me. And they turn around and all the men in our group like help me down off the curb. I'm like, thank you. Right. So it's like this kind of ridiculous over the top joke. And next thing you know, everybody's calling me Princess.
And does that get annoying to you or do you just take that in good fun?
Well, I assumed that it was just in good fun because I'm so not a princess. But I think I've learned since that actually I was kind of a princess and that they were actually taking this seriously. So I didn't interpret it that way until much later. And then I'm like, oh, I should have been insulted by that.
Okay.
But I just thought it was really funny and still do. I'm a total princess.
Another thing, speaking on the princess front, is a lot of the ski manufacturers back then, they weren't making gear that you guys needed. But for you especially, they were making women-specific gear, and some women really didn't like and still don't like to this day to ski on women's product. And what was your thoughts about it back then? First, I'm guessing you didn't like the gear in general. You didn't like 60mm underfoot 215s when you needed wider, shorter skis. But did women's product work for you?
Oh, never, and never will. Like, not even today. Yeah, and I was very outspoken about that. It's probably one of the most notorious things I ever did as I was on a panel discussion about the women's market in front of pretty much the entire industry and how to promote it and expand it and make more money on it. And I'm like, I don't know why I'm on this panel discussion because I don't believe in women's products. I don't think they should be made. I think they marginalize women. And every year, even to this day, I hear the same thing. Oh, no, it's different now. The women's skis are totally badass. I'm like, yeah, you've been saying that for 30 years. They're not. Right? And then somebody will say something like, oh, the reason why we make women's boots is because women weigh less than men and they have lower calves. I'm like, so does a 30-pound woman weigh less than a 30-pound man? And does a woman with high calves have lower calves than a guy with low calves and higher? Anyway, I don't think it's just ridiculous, but it's a marketing tool. But any woman who wants to become a better skier should probably not be on women's equipment. Actually shouldn't, because all the women's equipment are just the stuff that makes it easy. And the stuff that makes skiing easy is not necessarily going to be the tools that help you be the best skier you can be.
So when was the first year that you got on a ski that was totally game-changing for you, where you're like, wow, I'm not on a straight ski anymore. I'm on something that's actually going to make me better?
The Solomon shape skis, when they first came out, I forget, like the Force.
The Super Force 9 or whatever?
Yeah, those.
And they just had a little shape to them, too.
Yeah, yeah. But I know what you're getting at, too, with the fat skis. And the one regret I had is that I never filmed a ski movie on fat skis.
Never.
I was one of the last ones to not shift to fat skis. And like the last few movies I filmed, all in Alaska, I'm still on skinny skis and other people are on fat skis. And I'm just trying to ski as fast as they are just to look as good as they do. But I'm still on skinny skis. And I think it's just because they didn't get them to me in time to go on these last few trips. So, yeah, I didn't film a single movie on fat skis. So to compare my movies to the movies of today or the performances of today, it's a little not fair, but, whatever. It's okay. I don't care.
I would think the McConkeys of the world were giving you a ton of shit for that. Like, hey, we have better stuff now. What are you still doing on the skinny stuff?
And I'm like, well, I'm waiting for my delivery. That, I was right at the transition point. But I remember Shane just henpecking us all. Like, you got to get on fat skis. You got to get on fat skis. And he did that for, a whole season, probably season and a half. And we're like, whatever, Shane, we just thought he was just doing his thing. And it turns out he was right. But I didn't get on them faster, not because I was holding back, because I didn't want to give up my skinny skis. It was just because of a shipping issue.
And what sponsor do we blame that on?
I'd rather not say.
Fair enough. Who were the brands that paid you at the height of your career?
Ralph Lauren. It was my clothing sponsor, and Atomic, and Solomon for a while too, the North Face for a while. Leakey has always been from the very get-go. And still, they send me polls today. Smith and now Scott. And I had Red Bull too.
Okay.
I was a Red Bull athlete. I'm really proud of that because, it's funny with Red Bull. They only sponsor people, like they'll take the best in the world, but they'll also take like the third best in the world if they have the right personality.
For sure.
And so they spend a year just romancing me and me romancing them before they agreed to work with me because they wanted to get to know me. And I mentioned at the beginning of this interview that I quit drinking when I was 14. So I was a non-drinker sponsored by Red Bull, pretending that I was drinking alcohol because Red Bull's a mixer in order to get sponsored by them. So in what profession do you have to pretend to be a heavy drinker in order to get the job? Well, apparently big mountain extreme skiing. Yeah. So yeah, Red Bull.
And in terms of like finances, like, are you able to make at the height of your career? Because people are calling you, and I'm not saying that you are one of the greatest skiers of all time, but people called you, especially back then, the greatest female skier, extreme skier ever to ski. Are you able to make like $500,000 a year being a skier, being the best that ever did it at that point?
If I was living in Europe, yeah, I would have made millions. But because I was an American, this was in the 90s and the early 00s, and I consistently made six figures, not just from sponsors, but also from writing for magazines. And that was probably more than the top guys were making, most of them, which is saying something. And I know that girls today that are at my level today compared to how I was in the 90s are making less. And most of the money they get, they have to spend on travel budgets. But all the money that I made back then, I got to keep. And so I was very well paid for the era. And then I took all that money because I pretty much didn't live anywhere. I just traveled. And I invested it all in real estate. And so by the time I decided that I wanted to retire as a professional extreme skier, I had set myself up for life. I'd never have to work again from the money that I'd invested and saved and made during my ski career. So I'm really proud of that.
You're like the best that's ever been on this podcast, because I like to find out if people set themselves up for a good future. And no one says, no, I don't ever have to work again in my life, which is amazing because earlier I was saying that you had the mentality of like a 19-year-old kid who's blow it if you got it, do whatever I want all the time. But really, that was only with your body and skiing, but the rest of what you were doing was smart and you were thinking about your future, which is pretty amazing.
I was. And like I said before, I saw it's a business. And I was very prudent about when I would turn it on. I wasn't just skiing hard. Like a lot of people were talking about, oh, I don't want to be a sellout. I don't want to only jump off cliffs when there's cameras around. That's what sellouts do. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. No, this is a profession and you got to preserve your body. And so I think that's the reason why I never had a really bad crash, why I never had really bad injuries. All of my knee surgeries just really came from just that poor choice in surgeon and using cadaver before they had figured it out properly. Like I really didn't have that many injuries. And I mean, I do work. I'm very passionate about what I do for a living now as a fear and anxiety expert, which we could have another conversation about that another time. But I think that what really helped me was the approach that I took towards this being a profession. And then I was really smart about the investments that I made. And I made a lot of sacrifices back then. Like instead of having a nice place to live, I, just put my stuff in storage because I was traveling so much. Yeah, I'm really proud of how I conducted myself like that during my ski career. I'm really proud of how I showed up for my friends. And I'm not so proud of who I had to become in order to block out that pain and that fear during those years with my knees. But my ski career remains one of the most amazing experiences of my life. And I'm doing some really cool things now. It's not the most amazing experience of my life, but I have such profoundly wonderful memories. And I feel like the ski industry only treated me with respect and consideration. And I had endless opportunities. I loved every minute of it.
You were able to see the world, and for a girl who couldn't even see 5 feet in front of her face when she was living in New Hampshire, that's an amazing thing to do on someone else's dime. You're able to travel everywhere. Skiing created a whole lot of things for you. I've got so much more that we don't have time to go through right now because I know we're at a hard stop in an hour. So what I'm going to propose is that we'd finish this podcast maybe next week or the week after, and I finish with what I have with you. But I want to end the show with a segment that I call Inappropriate Questions. You know of this because you thought of 3 for Kent Kreitler. Well,
yes,
I let Kent come up with 3 for you because I figured it would only be fair if he came back and asked you 3 inappropriate questions. So I'm going to start with Kent's first question right now.
Question number 1, Kristen, what are the 3 most unusual places you've slept on a ski trip?
Oh, underneath the kitchen table while I watched Kent hook up with some Brazilian girl.
Okay.
In the same hotel room. I spent like a week living in a car at Thompson Pass in Alaska while heli skiing. And I know I can't ask this. We slept outside of a toilet in winter in South America together once because we couldn't talk the Austrian downhill team into letting us crash on their floors. And then we also camped one night in South America in the middle of winter too. We thought on a nice flat ground while driving, like we just threw our sleeping bags out. Me, Shane McConkey, Kent, and a photographer named T.R. Youngstrom.
Mm-hmm.
And when we woke up in the morning, we realized we were in the town garbage dump. So he's asking that because of that trip that we took in South America together, where 3 of the 4 of those, I mentioned 4, came from Kent, you rat bastard. All right, what else?
All right, let's go with question number 2.
Kristen, who's the hottest skier you've ever slept with in the same bed and never had sex with?
The hottest? Oh my God. Well, okay, Shane and I used to date, but Shane and I never had sex with each other. Hottest slept in the same bed with? Cameron Boyle, probably. Oh, I had such a crush on him. And we never had sex. I had to really limit who I had sex with. So I wanted to have sex with all of them and they all wanted to have sex with me. And so I didn't want to be that girl that slept with everybody. And so I'm like, all right, I can pick maybe 5.
Okay.
Maybe 5 over the course of what amounted to like 15 years. And so I didn't sleep with many of them, but I kissed a lot of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, you don't want to be that one getting a reputation because that's what would happen.
Oh, so fast.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Cameron Boyle is the one that I really, really wish I had slept with, but didn't. And I slept in the same bed with him, and I just kept saying no, because I knew everybody would hear about it if I did. He probably doesn't even know who Cameron was. He was a badass Squaw Valley mogul skier whom I haven't seen in 25 years. Hi, Cameron, if you're listening.
All right, let us go with Kent's final inappropriate question.
How many different vibrators have you owned in your life, and which is your favorite?
Oh, Kent. Of course, all his questions are about sex because he's a very sexy man and very sex focused. He tried to have sex with me once, and I'm like, I fled Alaska to get away from because he's so sexy and irresistible that I'm like, I can't go there. All right, how many vibrators? Well, I only have one at a time, and I use them until they die. And so I've really only owned like 4 of them, and that's it. Sorry, Kent.
All right. Well, that is inappropriate questions. I want to thank you for your time. I am going to...
And I have to go right now. My client is calling.
All right. Well, that's it then.
Love y'all. I love the inappropriate questions. I'll talk to you soon.
So that was time with Kristen Ulmer, and what a badass she was, and is. Actually, she's not as big a badass today as she was when she was in her 20s, when every single guy I knew had a crush on her. But now that she's gotten a little bit older, she's a little bit tamer. But no one can forget the incredible life and times that she's had on snow, and that's only part 1 of the podcast. And I will say that in this show, I used the word pussy to describe fear. That was calculated on my end, and I'm sorry about that. I was hoping that it would take the conversation in a certain direction, but it didn't. And I should clarify that I don't think it's right to use a female body part as a word to define weakness or fear. I think it's sexist and wrong. That said, I think it is okay to use the word dick or dickhead to describe a person you don't like. But whatever, the world isn't fair. Anyways, that's the podcast for this week. Kristen will be back for part 2 next week, but now it's time for me to read my review of the week. And this week, it is short and sweet. The review comes from Pasty C, and it's a 5-star review that's titled Mike Slays the Mic. Here's the review. Greatest podcast ever. Mike also helped convince my fiancée to race in the Red Bull Home Run, and she won while wearing his helmet. Mike now has a lucky helmet. Well, I can't remember your name off the top of my head, but I do remember spending an awesome day with you at Crystal. We spun some laps, we drank some beer, and I convinced your girlfriend, who is now your fiancée, to enter that race, and she won a free season's pass at Crystal. So I earned your girlfriend $500. I guess she did it by working her way down the mountain faster than anybody else. I was on the mic for that Red Bull event, and that was really, really fun. And congratulations, she said yes. You guys seem like an awesome couple. And please send me an email at mike@thepowellmovement.com, and I will send you out a beanie. I look forward to spinning some laps with you next year. And that is the review of the week. At this point, you can get yourself a free beanie. All you need to do is go to my website and click on the area where the beanies are, and you can buy one. Or you can submit a review to iTunes. If I read it on the show during the week, and as you can tell by the review I read this week, it's not that hard to get me to read one, I will send you a free beanie. They're limited edition. You can't get them anywhere but by writing a review through me. So if you want that, it's perfect for summertime. I'd love to send it your way. At this point, I need to thank my amazing sponsors who make this thing happen. They are Stanley, the 10 Barrel Brewery, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, Rollerblade, and Alpine Vans. Have a great week, everyone.